This is a vlog test. What I'm testing is one of the things I'm going to be talking about today. My name is Steven Rosenberg and it's September 10th, 2016. This is my first vlog. I've got a number of issues to talk about and I'm trying this venue out. So the first one is the protests at Standing Rock in North Dakota. I'm sharing with you posts that I've had on my Facebook page. I'm posting because I care about these issues and I realize that we have an opportunity to pass on information that the likes of which we've never been able to pass on before. We're able to do research, we're able to experience news like we've never experienced it before. When I flip on the channels CNN, MSNBC, and God forbid Fox, though I want to tell you that Fox is no less the news than MSNBC at this point, or CNN, or other news channels that come across as on the major networks. News does not exist in our country. News is something we remember if we're over the ages of 35. We remember that news used to come on and people used to come on just like I am right now. News used to be something that we could trust. Today, if someone's on your screen, mostly your TV screen, because most people depend on news on the television, on a major network, as credible, we still know that it's not the news. News bureaus all across the world, certainly in our country, have been closed down. News is a for-profit entity at this point. So if someone is broadcasting the news on a major network, they're doing it as a profit loss statement, and they're doing it for their underwriters. They're not doing it as a loss leader. It used to be that the news department on any television broadcasting network, news was a loss leader. There was no intention of making a profit. No one opened up a bureau in Saudi Arabia or in Taiwan or in Tokyo or in New York City. No one opened up a bureau in order to make money. In fact, there were bureaus all across the world in important cities whose sole intention was to be able to cover the news as it was happening. Now we have networks of news, which means that if there's one person reporting news in one location in the world, then that news will be taken by multiple networks and expanded upon, but not reported. I mean, they'll report it, but they won't investigate it. That's what I'm meant to say. It's not going to be investigated. So when a network transmit the news, they're transmitting opinions about a news item that came across their desk. And what we'll see in the corner of the screen, in the little corner, you'll see the little piece. Maybe you'll see the video and audio. Maybe you'll just see the video of that news segment, and you'll see someone right here who is telling you about the news. And then you'll see that person might invite 1, 2, 3, 4 people to voice their opinions about that piece of news that comes from maybe one news source in one location around the world. What we used to see were a very few network news stations, bureaus, that would tell you the news, but they would put that report on. Maybe they would fill the entire screen. And that news would be something they would start to report on, and they would investigate. So those bureaus around the world would then, there might be 3, 4, 5, 6 news bureaus in Tokyo that were not Tokyo news stations. And those bureaus would start to ask questions, and they would find out information, and then they would transmit that information, and it wouldn't be people's opinions, it would be they were looking to get down to the bottom of that news item, and they would find out who did, who, what, where, when, and why, and they would then report that news. And someone would get a scoop maybe, and they would be trying to get to the bottom of the news item. Now it's just transmitted, and if you flip through your channels, you'll see the news transmitted, the same picture, the same information, the same limited information, and you will get a slant, and usually it's the slant of the mainstream corporate media. I'm sort of surprised that I'm even saying that for the first time after 7 minutes on this vlog. So I'm a witness to the demise of news in our country. I think we think it started with Fox, and I think we think that Rupert Murdoch put together a conservative news conglomerate and started creating news as opinion in our country. What we sort of maybe didn't notice is that news eroded over time on all of our network news stations. So bureaus, like I said, were closed, and then that news eroded to opinion. And that opinion is slanted by the networks. And the networks, which were, I want to tell you, in 1983, it's a very personal year for me, because my father passed away. And my father was a young man of 48. When he passed away, it seemed like it was a pivotal moment, not for the news, but it was a pivotal moment in that the news changed coincidentally right at that time. We started to hear news as entertainment more and more and more and more. Like I said, it started with Fox. I don't know the dates, but news changed. We started hearing for and against on the radio, as if there is a for and against. If you put up an important issue, yeah, there's going to be a for and against. But if you put up something, for example, like, should blank have killed blank, it's not a for and against situation. It's not an opinion. It's not conservatives against liberals. Somehow that was manufactured along the way. I'll say more about that in future vlogs if I continue this. But I just have noticed the news has eroded. The news has eroded to opinion. And again, there'll be more about that. But the networks now, when I turn them on, if I'm living in Washington, in the metropolitan area of Washington, and I watch some news in real time, sometimes I witness the news. And in real time, I'm seeing news. Excuse me. I'll get back to them. In real time, I'm seeing the news in front of me, whether I go to a protest or I see live feeds of news going on as it will. And then I flip on the mainstream corporate media, CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News. And basically, they've either not covered the news, they've chosen not to cover that event, or they cover it in a little video screen, and they basically marginalize it with a tagline and their commentary. And their commentary will be nothing to do with that particular news item. It's very interesting to see that happen in real time. It's very interesting because of the internet to see things, live feeds, to see events as they unfold, and then see them, as I said, not covered or marginalized as a news item, or they'll show the video and audio of a segment that was handpicked that completely skews the event, or they'll basically show you the picture and tell you something that completely just did not happen. So the couple of items I'm going to talk to you about specifically about, as I said, I'm reporting on the items that I am sharing on social media. So I've tiled another screen in front of me with those items, and I want to share those. Now, I'm heavily influenced in doing this vlog by a couple of people. There's a woman named Claudia Stauber who is now traveling. I think she's on her way to Colorado right now to share a book that she's written. But she's been covering the Bernie Sanders campaign. The last year of my life, year and a half, I've been campaigning for Bernie Sanders, and I've been in 7 states canvassing. I've made phone calls, numerous phone calls. I've hosted events. I've attended events, and I have been dedicated to someone who has for 40 to 50 years has been constantly working for us in numerous positions, starting with mayor of Burlington, Vermont, and now he's a senator representing the state of Vermont. And he has been unwavering until sometime this summer when he wavered. More about that in the future, but that's what I've been doing. Anyway, Claudia Stauber on the way has used social media to report on a good number of events. She is now supporting Jill Stein for president, who has taken the mantle or taken the baton from Bernie Sanders and is campaigning. And hopefully she'll be successful to a great degree. More about that later, more politics later. But just so you know that Claudia Stauber is someone who I watch. She has a video blog just like this. Usually it's a live feed from her cabin in Vermont, and today I saw a video feed of her on her way, literally on the road to Colorado. Another person is the Sane Progressive, a woman who has been also vlogging, and she's on social media. She has been a great influence because she's covering the election, and she is highly critical of everything from the mainstream corporate media to our electoral system to Bernie Sanders himself in his decisions in the last couple of months to go in the direction that he's gone. I love hearing her perspective because she is doing a lot of research on the internet, and she is walking the walk in the sense that she is actually transmitting news and information that can't be gotten otherwise. I will share a couple of other names. Tim Cook is not one of those names. Tim Cook is the CEO of Apple Computer, and I am not following him. Sorry about that, except that I'm highly critical of him, even though I'm talking to you through... oops, I'm just going to do a technical thing. My screen has gone somewhere. I need to get this back. I'm about to play music accidentally, inadvertently. Sorry for that. Thank you for your patience. The two people that are going to see this. So I was talking about Tim Cook. I'm talking on an Apple device. I'm talking on a MacBook Pro and looking at a giant screen of another Mac device. Love the product, but I'm highly critical of the process by which Apple, one of the largest corporations in the world, obfuscates its role in paying taxes and its corporate responsibility to the United States and to the world, because it's international corporation. Also, their labor practices are horrendous in the sense that they rely on labor from around the world, and the conditions under which these amazing products, these amazing devices are built by labor from China and other countries is horrendous. And I'll talk more about that later. The person I meant to say was Tim Black. Tim Black is another alternative source who has his own video blog. Additionally, I am amazingly influenced for decades by Democracy Now!, long before the internet. They've been transmitting real news for years through public radio and now on the internet. And Amy Goodman is an important influence, and of course there are other people involved in democracy now, but she's a stalwart purveyor of the news, the real news. In fact, it's really hard to listen to her news often because she's telling us the news seemingly 24/7, and it's news that is not sweet and fluffy and made for the mainstream to consume as entertainment. Her news has been transmitted as news, news that has not been covered by the mainstream corporate media. So what I'm sharing with you today are the postings that I have of late. And those were my influences, and a couple of items that I need to share are protests. As I look around my screen, protests, information, inspirational information. I'm just scrolling through. I should bring the screen down so that I'm looking more into people working for us behind our backs to create a better, more important democracy. We don't have that in our country. We have an oligarchy. What's amazing about the Bernie Sanders campaign that I've been involved in is that he has shared with us things that we know exist, but we have not had terms to discuss them because the mainstream corporate media just do not bring to light, do not shine a light on the reality of our world. They shine a light on some description of democracy, capitalism, and mainstream pop culture, and of course wars in careful bite-sized chunks, and of course news items that they make decisions on how they're going to cover that news item for their own best interests. I started to say that in 1983 my father passed away, and coincidentally everything shifted, but it happens to be statistical information that our mainstream corporate media were run by 50 corporations in 1983. They did include Fox News. They did include NBC, ABC, CBS, and other conglomerates around the country. Now, almost 40 years later, there are 6 corporations that our news, that own the news, that own our media, through which we receive the news. And it's really for corporations. What has occurred in that time period is that all that news has shrunk from a few networks that we would see on television to hundreds of networks that we see on television. But those hundreds give us the illusion of objectivity. Those hundreds give us the illusion because all those hundreds of news outlets that we might get in any one location, which happen to, well, I'll illustrate this better than making the point. those hundreds of news outlets, hundreds of media outlets that we have access to through cable television and the internet are owned by 6 corporations. So with no bureaus around the world, no news bureaus. And those 6 corporations decide upon the news. If you're getting one little news feed in the corner of your screen that goes out over tens, if not hundreds, of news stations in your area that you can flip through the channel. I'll simulate a clicker. Flip through with your clicker, and you're getting the same picture. You're not only getting the same picture, but you're getting only a few takes on that same picture over hundreds of news outlets, which means that you're just getting a little bitty bit of the news. People get together and they decide, and it's not even people getting together to decide. One whole conglomerate will send out the same bit of news. So you have less news over seemingly an infinite number of sources because it's one decision, one editorial decision that decides what the news is going to be. And if it's a mainstream corporate media outlet that is telling you the news, they're going to share with you one slant. And that slant is going to support all of their interests. And their interests are corporate, and their interests are connected to all of our industries that are owned by those same corporations. I'll share more about that later. But today, on my news feed, which I have 2 what I would call news feeds on social media. One is just Steven Rosenberg, and the other is Stephen for Bernie - Bernie for Everyone on Facebook. Lately, I have not been posting as much on Stephen for Bernie - Bernie for Everyone because it's hard to tell what's going to happen with Bernie Sanders. The funny thing, and again, I'll talk about more about this later, because I'm not going to talk about Bernie Sanders today, is that Bernie Sanders is still viable as a candidate. He could still step in at any point, and I'll connect that to politics later. I want to declare, and it's in this news feed, so I'm going to read from the text of something I just posted, which is, I solemnly swear I'm with neither. So I posted a picture of Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, both of whom couldn't be less favorable as candidates for the presidency. And something that I'm posting daily is information that basically is information about those 2 candidates that disqualifies them for the presidency. Ironically, the most powerful of the 2 people is Hillary Clinton. And you would think she's just a regular person who's served our country and will continue to serve our country just as a servant. But she is probably the most powerful person that's ever run for office. And the person with the bluster, and herein lies the irony, the person with the bluster who is least capable, who has the least going on, is Donald Trump. And Donald Trump, who claims to be able to do everything, is really inept. He's got scores of failed businesses. He's accomplished very little in his life. He's had a show that basically everything he is involved in is a heavy-duty media campaign by him, for him, by him, for him, to propel his own name brand. He's branded himself, and he sticks his name on anything he can with very little risk, and proceeds to create something or be part of something that couldn't be less ineffectual. Whether he's selling steaks, ties, properties, timeshares, casinos, they're very unsuccessful. The only thing they have going for them is what I used to look at on a General Motors car, which is, that for a time they were the only American-made car, in the sense that all their parts were made in the United States. General Motors. I think they made that claim. And there was a certain era when I was just coming up, when I was a young adult, where everything they made was crap. It's so analogous to Donald Trump in the sense that if they put even the name on the dashboard, that name of that vehicle was going to fall off. The parts of, the moving parts, any decal on the vehicle was bound to fall off the vehicle. Any of the plastic that they had applied to adorn the vehicle was going to break away, or you see very few of those vehicles out there. You see vehicles of older vintage that survive and with all their parts, and somehow there was a period of time when General Motors just made crap. And I think Donald Trump makes crap. I don't think people... It's funny that he can make the claim that he's an amazing businessman. To be in control of billions of dollars, if that's true, isn't amazing if someone handed it to you. So he's the man with all the bluster. He is yet to describe anything that's actually a success of his, that's an innovation. He's not Bill Gates. He didn't create something. And I have my arguments against Bill Gates and what he's created from a business standpoint, but Donald Trump hasn't created anything. There's very little with his name still on it. Yes, he has Trump Towers or whatever. I'm not even really... It's questionable how much he actually owns or has created, but certainly he's put his name on a lot of things. He's the man with the bluster. I personally believe, and of course I'll talk about this more later, that he is a plant by the Clintons, because there's nothing he's even doing that resembles a run for the presidency of the United States of America. What he's doing is a giant ad campaign for himself in some way, and he couldn't be working harder to make himself, he's garnered primary and caucus wins, or primary wins in the Republican Party, which is, God knows what they stand for, but he has really done everything he can to propel Hillary Clinton forward to be the next president of the United States. Fear is the only thing he has going for him. And then on the counter side, on the ironic side, fear is the only thing that Hillary has going for her. So both, we can be fearful together. So I posted that. I solemnly swear I'm with neither. What I put on any posting about Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump is I post, the hashtag no Trump, no Clinton. And right now, given the vacuum that Bernie Sanders has left in his decision in this summer, I'm saying more about why neither of them is capable as president than I am supporting anybody. I'm Bernie or bust, but Bernie or bust is an interesting thing, given the circumstances that I could not have foretold because of the successful run for office of the Bernie Sanders campaign, and then him dropping out in a way that I couldn't have anticipated, and many could not have anticipated. So, but I'm just basically vlogging about my postings this week. So the two main protests that I'm vlogging about today are the Standing Rock protest by Native Americans in that region of North Dakota, and the Colin Kaepernick protest in the National Football League. I'll start with my posting for Colin Kaepernick. Happily, people are kneeling or sitting down, joining Colin Kaepernick, who courageously decided not to stand up for the national anthem. A long time ago, I have, at times more diligently than others, decided not to stand up for the national anthem. And no one noticed. No one's going to notice that. But this statement that Colin Kaepernick is and I'm sure I'm saying his name wrong because I don't watch the mainstream corporate media, but this statement that Colin Kaepernick is making, I'll just say Colin, is so powerful in the wake of so much violence against African Americans in our country and so much evidence that racism exists completely in our country. I think we're sensitized as a nation. I think the average person walking around is sensitized to African Americans and white Americans and Asian Americans and people of all cultures and people who are uncomfortable with, who have different sexual preferences or different identity, sense of their own identities, like no other time. I mean, for the most part, people are very accepting. I mean, we've come way forward and with gay rights and rights for people who have identities that are not the majority identities in our country. Gay marriage, of course, women's rights. In our country, we have systematized racism in a way that it's hard to unravel. But the nice thing is we're unraveling it. People are coming forward. I mean, I'm learning every single day through the internet, not through mainstream corporate media, but through the internet, new ways of looking at our circumstance in this country. And I applaud Colin for sitting down during the national anthem. Mainstream corporate media would have us think that everybody's supposed to be in lockstep and accept everything the way it is, and everybody's working hard. But we live in an oligarchy, and we live in a system that favors a different minority, which is the 1%. They have done very, 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 very well over the last 40 years because of the policies that have shifted for their benefit by them. I mean, they've written the laws. They've written the laws that support greater coalescence of wealth and I was just looking at the time. I realized my little 5-minute test is 42 minutes at this point. So it'll be a longer vlog. But there are very few people that run our country. The statistics I don't have in front of me, but another thing that's been highlighted in this last election cycle is that very few people make decisions, just like our mainstream corporate media, for everything that we see, do, hear, touch, and our entire experience. And a lot of our experience is dictated by other people's interests, a few other people's interests. So Colin Kaepernick is highlighting that. I just posted a vlog that has the Seattle Seahawks entire team are planning to protest the national anthem at their opening game. So I'm hoping this is true. I'm hoping that this, and I'm just gonna pull it down so I'm not looking way up here in space. I'm hoping that this headline is by Harvey Lewis is entirely true, that the entire Seattle Seahawks team will protest the national anthem at their opening game. If that happens, I guarantee you one thing, that the mainstream corporate media will not give its fair due. However, this is a mainstream institution. The NFL, people are more religious about the NFL and the National Baseball League and hockey and the NHL and our sports than we are about our religion. This is high impact. A few people whose names I don't have in front of me have also already supported Colin, already in solidarity, not just in the NFL but in other sports, have taken a knee, like I pointed out earlier, or sat down during the national anthem. I've also posted recently numerous posts by veterans who have highlighted the idea that their service to our country is not for the mainstream corporations and profits and oil and industries around the country, but is for the right for someone like Colin or anybody to, in essence, speak their truth. It's for the right of freedom of speech. And whether we're burning a flag, which seems un-American in its most simplest form, or not standing for the national anthem, it isn't that simple. It's the simplicity of it is that we're making a statement when we do those things, and in this case, it's part of a bigger statement that he can't support a country or an anthem of a country that is so blatantly racist against his people, against the people with whom he associates with. I'm 100% one of those people, even though I'm as pale as anybody could be, but I'm in solidarity with Colin Kaepernick. So that's one protest that is highlighted. But ironically, while that protest is highlighted by the mainstream corporate media, mostly in the negative, and police forces like the San Francisco, I'm not sure, what they're, how they're identified, but the San Francisco police are going to boycott the first San Francisco game because of his protest, or not, or I don't know what's going to transpire in this week of football tomorrow. But ironically, this is highlighted, like I said, mostly in the negative. At the same time, what's not highlighted are the people in Standing Rock, North Dakota, or the Standing Rock protesters in North Dakota, who are protesting the Dakota Access Pipeline. And that Dakota Access Pipeline that they're protesting is illegal, in my mind, is totally immoral, and just one other breach of treaty to the Native American people who control that land, or seemingly control that land, because a corporation, or a number of corporations and banks and people whose interests are served by the pipeline being built have come in and, in some form of manifest destiny, they have taken over the land, sacred burial grounds and sacred lands. And it doesn't matter if it was a garbage dump depot for the landfill, for the people, the Native American people. They're coming across the land, like I said, illegally, immorally, and in a breach of all the treaties that are connected to those Native American people that live there. It highlights so many other breaches, and such trespass for lands all across the world. all across the country, and ones that are owned by the United States people, where a company just decides to just basically cross the land with whatever, in this case pipelines, and violate the law and the people's rights. So here, for weeks and weeks and weeks, highlighted these last couple weeks, Native Americans are standing up in protest. And this meme says, "I stand with the Standing Rock protesters. By sharing this, I am politically voicing my opinion to the theft and destruction of ancient Native American lands and burial sites." Churches, Native Americans from other tribal regions, Native Americans connected to these people, and disconnected, and people are protesting via the social media and Facebook, and highlighting this, but you're not hearing it on the mainstream corporate media. So while Colin Kaepernick, who's protesting by quietly sitting down during the national anthem and then vocalizing his protest in statements for the news media, is being covered, this travesty of justice is not being covered, and the positive protests are not being covered. And it doesn't matter. I don't have to do an analysis of the mainstream corporate media to know that even if they were covering it, would they be covering it for the interests of the people, or would they be covering it for their own mainstream corporate interests? I know the answer. I mean, we're seeing the answer over and over and over again with everything. So I'm highlighting that on my page, and I'm highlighting it without any shame or guilt or hesitation. I don't get a lot of flack these days because I think people have left my pages alone, which is probably emotionally healthy if you disagree with me. But I'm posting because people are not getting this information. You know, the nature of Facebook and social media is that we get information that agrees with our own viewpoint. But I do have a number of friends, and other people have a number of friends who are people who have a differing viewpoint. And what happens is my stuff comes over their newsfeed. And I think that once you're exposed, it's hard to have a crazy false argument. And I post often with the hashtag #WeAreTheMedia. So we are the media. We're the media, and the media, it's really on us because we don't have investigation of and transmission of actual news. We have a very canned version of the news, a very repetitive. I mean, the most important things in the world could happen, and we're going to every single night hear about Donald Trump. Why? Why are we hearing about Donald Trump? Why is it his opinion? Why does his opinion even matter to us? The mainstream media would have us believe that it's because he boosts ratings. Well, Bernie Sanders, for example, just going back to that for a moment, would probably boost ratings more than anybody were he to be covered and have been covered and have not and not have been part of a blackout. While he was garnering from the beginning of his run, from his announcement on forward, garnering the largest crowds. To this day, Clinton can't even get a gymnasium full of people to witness her, this populist candidate, manufactured by the mainstream corporate media and by herself and the support of the DNC. I'm making a lot of leaps of assumptions that you're aware of this, but Bernie Sanders is a real, true populist candidate and could easily garner the ratings of a Donald Trump. The sensational Donald Trump, sure, yeah, he can speak ill of anybody and make crass statements and make horrible comments about anything, and outlandish statements and blustery statements every single day of the year. And sure, he'll get ratings, but as I talked about earlier, he's not the news. That's not the news. That's an opinion, and it's covered, and it's not questioned, and you have to wonder why that's the case. But if Bernie Sanders were really covered, and his issues or position on issues were really covered, people would be all over it. This is the guy that got tens of thousands of people to tens, if not hundreds, of venues around the country during this election cycle. He had record numbers of people come out to see him. He was the only person that had people marching for him. He was the only person that had rallies, who supported protests, who had the number of people volunteering that he had, which eclipsed all the other candidates, all 15, 16, 17 Republican candidates. And I'm sorry, hold on one second. I just was checking something. He would get the ratings. It's not about ratings. It's about people. It's about the mainstream corporate media propelling forward for whatever reason. In this case, it's my conjecture that it's to scare us into supporting Hillary Clinton. More about her later. I do not support Hillary Clinton. I will not vote for her if Hitler himself came forward against her, because I certainly wouldn't vote for Hitler, but I'm not going to be scared into voting for Hillary Clinton. I have a lot to say about her, lots and lots of articles and messages and issues around Hillary Clinton. I won't talk about them today. But going back to the protesters in North Dakota, the mainstream corporate media, like I said, are not covering her. Mainstream corporations and industries, mostly the fossil fuel industry, are using their powers to subvert our democracy and are basically able to do it illegally all over our country. Right now it's being highlighted in North Dakota. They're trying to build a pipeline. It's already been built. Pipelines have been built all across the West and all across our country, and countless oil spills and degradation of our environment have occurred because of these pipelines. But in this case, North Dakota, the people's rights, justice in North Dakota are being subverted by our government acting on behalf of mainstream corporations to support those corporations. So now we even have the military who are coming in to support this travesty. As a people, we need to pay attention. We need to look at the pieces that come across our social media. The people who we've poo-pooed because they seem radical and they're always negative and sharing with us all these things that are going on that feel negative. We need to start looking at those things. We need to look at why would someone post these items. I'm posting them, and I'm not going to stop posting them because I have that ability. I have that outlet. I can share information that people are not getting, and I can share it to people who might be getting a little bit of it, but I'm going to share a lot because I can, and because I am empowered by doing so. And I'm hoping that if someone just looks at a little bit, I mean, we've all been privy to people who are who have information that we don't have, and we look to them. In some ways we go, well, we're not comfortable. We're not ready for that information. We're not even, we don't want to be there. I mean, even if it's your friend from high school who became a monk and is living in dedication to their belief and spending time on a mat or a pillow, meditating and gardening and being a low negative impact on the planet. And we look to them and we go, oh, that person's pretty cool. I mean, I would never live that way. I couldn't. The way I've got too much responsibility. I've got people to feed. I've got to do my job. I've got responsibilities, and I've got retirement funds to amass, and I've got and I can't give up my lifestyle. And I respect that. I understand that completely. But there's so much information to be had. We have to take it in, I guess. There's a level of comfort, but that information's out there, and I'm encouraging people to. No one's gonna. First of all, I'm encouraging you at the end of an hour of this video or this vlog. So anybody that gets to the end of this hour is extraordinary in a way. But if you do get to the end of this hour, or if you skip to the end to find out what I have to say, I just encourage you to look further. I can't even speak to comfort level. You're going to have to take it in as you will. But realities exist. Trust yourself. Question authority. Look at this information that's right in front of you. Stop watching the corporate mainstream media, or buffer it, or just put it in a compartment and know that they have their interests, and those interests are not your interests. So I'm going to leave you with one last thing. I don't know how I can get this on the video log. I probably could edit it in some way. But I sing karaoke, and I realized, this being my first video blog, that this is potentially a lot of things. So I'll just let it go. But anyway, I sing karaoke. One of my favorite songs to sing, just because I can, is Redemption Song. And I just saw this great Bob Marley quote from that song that says, "Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds." So I'll leave you with that, Bob Marley. Thank you.